All right, Alexander, let's talk about the French elections, which the first round is right around the corner. And Macron has been criticized by Bloomberg in an article the other day saying that he's toxic. Bloomberg is reporting that Macron is toxic. He's toxic. He's toxic in France. He's toxic in the European Union. No one wants to be around Macron. So are we going to be talking about a Macron curse or something? He's toxic. He went from being the ultimate globalist to now being toxic because of all the decisions he has made over the past month.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. When he was elected in 2017, he was the globalist golden boy. I remember reading all these enormously flattering and laudatory pieces about him in places like The Guardian back in 2017, that he was going to bring a new type of politics, that he would be the French Justin Trudeau. And in fact, there are some similarities. Anyway, there were all kinds of expectations of Macron. And, France, as I've always said, very different country, very old country, very powerful traditions, and it's all falling apart. Now, we're getting opinion polls coming out of France. And of course, opinion polls in France are not always completely reliable, just as they're not in most places. But if what they show is what turns out to be the case, then I think that there is now a possibility that the Rassemblement National, Marine Le Pen's party, might actually get a majority in the French National Assembly. I mean, they seem to be pulling ahead. They are now polling at around 36 to 38% of the vote, which is a significant increase over the 31% that they got in the European Parliament elections. So they're surging. The interesting thing is that the combined left parties, which have just about managed to hold together, but where the dominant personality is Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is, the sort of very strong, fierce leftist, very old school leftist. I mean, he's the kind of person that in France was, almost mainstream for a time in the 60s and 70s. Anyway, he's come back. He's now apparently, this grouping looks like they might win up to 30% of the vote. And Macron's party, which is the only party of the centre that seems to be left because all of the others look like they've collapsed, they are getting less than 20% of the vote. So it's starting to look like we're going to have a National Assembly which is pretty much dominated by two big blocs, both of which, on the right and on the left, are deeply hostile to Macron. But the thing to understand is that the French electoral system, even though it's based on proportional representation, it's a proportional representation system, which isn't pure like the German one is, where the percentage of votes a party gets is going to be reflected almost exactly in the proportion of MPs it elects to the parliament. The French system tends, like the Greek, to reward the winner. So the fact that Le Pen's party is doing as well as it is, as I said, points to a possibility that she might win a majority. She's quite close on the opinion polls to that point, and the drift is in her favour. I understand that there was a television debate between the prime ministerial candidates. The leader of her party in the parliament, I forget his name, Bardella, apparently did well. Most of the views are that he gave an accomplished and effective performance. So all the stars are aligning behind Le Pen and the Rassemblement National, and they're turning sour on Macron. And, we were the first people to say that if the vote went against him, he might resign. There's another article today in the Daily Telegraph by a French journalist who says that the consensus in France now is that if these results are as bad as people perhaps think for him, that he will resign, and about the fact that he's become toxic. He's become toxic. Apparently even his own party in these elections is now distancing itself from him. His political allies in France are distancing themselves from him. He's lost face and support in Europe and amongst the globalists of whom he is part. I think he will resign.
Yeah, we were the first channel that talked about his possible resignation. You mentioned it in a video that we made a couple of weeks ago, and I wonder if these articles that are coming out, like the Bloomberg article, which are labeling Macron as toxic and citing various sources and unnamed officials in Europe and in France as wanting to distance themselves from Macron, is not so much about reporting what they're hearing from these officials, but maybe it's the mainstream media being given the orders to nudge Macron, to hint at Macron, it's time for you. If you really get pummeled these elections, you need to go.
Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe we're seeing something like that, where the media has now been told you need to start putting out articles so that Macron can get the hint if he really does poorly in these elections.
As all the opinion polls suggest he will. I think so. I think all of these articles are intended to prepare us for the fact that he is going to go. And they're also a pretty clear message to Macron himself that he's simply not wanted, that he's messed up, that he was the man who was supposed to stop Le Pen and turn everything back and bring France back into the, neoliberal order, and that in effect what he's achieved is the opposite. And I think people are very angry with him. And I think going back to something we said in a recent program, I think at some level he wants to go. He understands that things have not played out well. He doesn't want 2 years as a lame duck president in France. Better go, leave it all to Le Pen. The French have failed to understand or appreciate his genius. He can then go back to the world that he came from, the world of banking and investment. And on top of that, after the anger against him has abated, well, he'll be readmitted to all the great institutions. He might even become, for all I know, president of the IMF. That seems to me an obvious place for him to end up. It seems to be a French domain now. We've had people like Christine Lagarde run it, so maybe Macron will be a good fit. He's incompetent as a president of France, but as we know, that doesn't in any way affect things when the fact that somebody's incompetent doesn't prevent them getting appointed to all of these positions.
Let me ask one quick question. What do you expect from Le Pen?
Well, I think if Macron resigns, there will presumably be elections, at which point she will stand for the presidency with a very, very strong chance of being elected. If he stands, well, we're going to have a major battle between her and Macron about who leads France.
We will end the video there. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Use the code football24. Take care.